Here's how everybody wants to start their day. Today's guest, Friday, June 6th, episode, I don't know when it was recorded, but it was posted this morning. Today's episode of the Joe Rogan Experience, his guest is Kash Patel, FBI Director. Kash Patel, who allegedly has barely been showing up for work, they've taken his daily briefings as director of the FBI from 5 days down to 2 because he's busy going to UFC fights and NBA playoff games. But he's got time to hang out for 3 or 4 hours in Austin, Texas, fly there, fly back, and hang out and do an episode of the Joe Rogan Experience. Okay, I guess I see some value in having the FBI director be interviewed by all sorts of people. I watched 5 minutes of a 20-minute clip that was posted this morning. Was posted about 35 minutes ago. It's 10:35 a.m. West Coast time. And it's just titled, Kash Patel tells Joe Rogan that Epstein killed himself. And here's the funny thing. You know, Kash Patel starts off by saying, well, it wasn't me. I wasn't in power when all of this stuff happened. You know, back in 2007 when he got his sweetheart deal, where he was allowed to leave jail during the day, but had to come back to jail at the end of the day and spend the night. And he had to do that for 6 months in Florida, in West Palm Beach, Florida. But what they didn't mention is that the federal prosecutor at the time, his last name was Acosta, who gave Jeffrey Epstein that sweetheart deal when Donald Trump got reelected got elected for the first time in 2016. Donald Trump made that guy his labor secretary, the guy who gave Jeffrey Epstein the sweetheart deal. And they also didn't mention that the state attorney general in Florida at that time was the now attorney general, Pam Bondi, hand-selected by Donald Trump, after killing an investigation by the state of Florida into Trump University when Donald Trump gave her a $25,000 campaign contribution. And Kash Patel is on the show. He's like, why would we lie? You know, he's talking about him and Dan Bongino, who's the deputy director of the FBI. Why would we lie? Why would we hide against this stuff? And Joe Rogan, to his credit, started immediately pushing back. He was like, it was reported that the guards were asleep. It was reported that the cameras were down. And Kash Patel has experience being in these types of facilities from his days as a criminal defense attorney, meeting with clients who were incarcerated. He was like, both of those things may be true, but there's still no way for anybody to get in. There are no access points. And then he was like, but I don't really know. You'd have to ask Bill Barr, who was the attorney general at the time that Jeffrey Epstein died. And who was president when Jeffrey Epstein died? Donald Trump. I mean, every single road, every single thread that you pull related to Jeffrey Epstein leads back to Donald Trump. Every single one of them. And then Joe Rogan started hitting Kash Patel with some forensics. I only watched 5 minutes of this 20-minute clip, and he was like, well, don't you remember that show? It was on HBO about like celebrity autopsies or something, and they had that guy, Dr. Michael Baden, who was a forensic medical examiner, and he examined Jeffrey Epstein's body and the records and the x-rays, and he said this is much more like a ligature strangulation as opposed to a hanging. And he's grilling him on this, and Kash Patel's like, I'm not familiar with that. I'm not familiar with that. He didn't even know that existed. Director of the FBI who's working on this case didn't even know that existed. And Joe Rogan's like, you haven't seen this? You haven't seen that episode? You haven't seen his report? And he's like, So that's our current director of the FBI, kids. Little Kash Patel. Jesus Christ.